Welcome back and welcome to the 2016 Skoda Octavia Wagon RS, or VRS if you're from the UK. It does have a V on the back. Now this isn't just any old Skoda, this is my Skoda. And I've had it for a little over 4 years now. It's now 9 years old this year. And I wanted to do a little bit of a video on what it's really like. How practical are they? Are they as cool as certain people on the internet say? Thanks, Adam. And do I want to keep it? Let's see. So let's start under the bonnet. This is a 2-litre inline-4 turbocharged engine. It came in two variants, petrol and diesel. This one has 162 kilowatts or 220 horsepower. The more current versions have gone up by increments of around about 10 horsepower on each new model to the current Octavia, which has 260 horsepower or 195 kilowatts. Now, in terms of torque, this one has 350 Newton meters, and it's only really gone up by 20 Newton meters over that 9 years to only 370 in the current one. So whether that's perceptible or not, I'm not sure. Now, I could talk about the diesel. I could, but I'm not going to. Why would you buy a hot hatch or a hot wagon and buy a diesel? Now, its only saving grace is the fact that you did have an option to have all-wheel drive, whereas this one is obviously just front-wheel drive. And unless you're doing long distances, diesels don't do very well in stop-start traffic. Particulate filters, anyone? There are issues across so many different brands. But nonetheless, this is reasonably economical, depending on how heavy my right foot is, which is reasonably heavy, so maybe I could do better. But nonetheless, it's a pretty good workhorse. There are some issues that these engines are plagued by, although I've had none of them. It's only done 85,000 kilometers, so we're a way off from the 100,000 mile levels where you start to have problems with the water pumps. You'd also need to change the cam belt. They have problems with their DSG automatic transmission. But with this one, there's been no issues with the engine. I do regularly service it every 12 months. I do less than probably 10,000 kilometers a year. So the oil is constantly changed, the filters are changed. I change the brake fluid on a regular basis. So if you look after it, it will look after you. Now inside, it's a pretty standard Volkswagen affair. Decent steering wheel, leather bound. Some people have a problem with the flat bottom. Don't know why. I quite like it. Makes it easier to get in and get out of the car. There are some buttons on the steering wheel, not too much, where you can control the sound system and also change the TFD display on the center of the dash. When I first bought this car, I wasn't overly enamored with some of these scratchy plastics here and on the door handles, but they've stood up well. The center console doesn't really make any sounds. I'm not getting any squeaks or rattles, although there is one rattle that's beginning to happen, which I've discovered is the rear wing, where it's literally just glued on. Looks like that glue's beginning to go off. So there's just a matter of re-gluing that back. But it's all very intuitive, all at hand. It's got nice dials which are easy to understand. It's a hot day and I'm slightly sweaty, so apologies for that. Now, this one doesn't come with electronic seats. Don't really need them. It's got lumbar support, which is perfect for my back, certainly on long journeys, and I can drive for hours without getting any bum ache, which can't be said for a lot of cars that I've driven. Plenty of space in the door bins that can hold, reasonable sized bottles. You've got an area here where you can conceal your phone, charging port there, an old USB charging port. Reasonable size little cubby hole there. There's another 12-volt charger at the back, plus obviously what we used to call the cigarette lighter is a 12-volt charge. Air conditioning works really well. So really not a lot I can say. So certainly I find it a pretty easy car to get around in. It's comfortable. The seats It's unfortunate they were spec'd as the half leather cloth seat, but they're easy to keep clean. In fact, these ones I probably need to give them a little bit of a shampoo because my kids keep on getting in and out of going to the beach with wet bums. Doesn't help. But nonetheless, it's a nice place to be. You could say perhaps there's a little black in here, but it doesn't bother me ultimately. But let's see what it's like in the back. Right. I'm just under 6'2", 6'1", so I'm sitting behind my normal driving position. There's loads of room back here. Yeah, the wings of the seats sort of get in the way a little bit, I think, for the rear passengers to see out of. So I can understand my younger kids perhaps not enjoying that so much, but my youngest sits very comfortably in here. Now, the interesting thing about the Skoda Octavia over and above the Golf derivative is the fact that even though it's essentially the same platform, it's essentially the same car, just with a different shell, this one is 300mm longer than the Golf. And certainly when you have children, some of which are nearing and eclipsing 6'5", it becomes very, very handy. That extra 300mm, 30cm is quite a lot. So it does make a big difference. Now back here, there's not a lot going on. Yes, you've got air vents, so you can sync it from the front so that everybody's on the same temperature, or you can set it up from different sides of the car to be the temperature that particular passenger would want. Air vents coming through here, vents coming under the seat so it keeps your feet cool. This is what we used to call an ashtray, not anymore. Some door bins, not very big, but enough for kids to be able to store their things. Obviously electric windows. And that's pretty much it, so not much more, but it's comfortable. You can move these seats, and to be honest, I rarely sit back here, but it's all right. I quite like it with the armrest setting down, so you've got plenty of room for coffees. You've got a little ski hatch that will come through as well, so that come all the way down so you can climb through there, as my 9-year-old does on occasion, but certainly it's what we used to call a ski hatch, so that's all very handy. But that's pretty much all I can say about the back. Now, these are practical because they're a wagon, so let's check the back out and what's the differences there. So with the seats up, you get 568 litres of space back here. Again, a little bit grubby, I need to clean up, but this is where I put all my detailing products, so there's no point constantly cleaning it. Very handy little hooks for shopping, and cubby spaces there, an area here where you can secure certain cargo. But that's 568, where this is where the Golf would probably beat it, because that would have 611. So Skoda have obviously moved the seats back a little bit to reduce some of that cargo space. But with the seats down, yes, they don't go flat, but with the seats down, you get 1718 litres of space. So you can move apartments in this thing. Obviously the parcel tray comes in and out, no problem at all. You do have your 12-volt power charge there. So it's all very, very practical. I like the split seat arrangement, so you can at least have one passenger, or even 1.5 if you like, with one coming through. Now the difference with the Golf as well is that with their seats down, that only comes to 1642 litres. So, you know, this really is a pretty practical car from a point of view of stowage. Now, I could probably try and lie down there, but because of that dip, it's not going to be overly comfortable. But there you go. So it's sporty and it's practical. That sportiness really comes in the fact that it's quite low in weight. Less than 1,400 kilos, I think 1,385. Which, to give you a point of reference if you need one, the Holden Cruise, which was often touted as the worst built Australian car, I had one, and it was the exception to that rule. More on that later maybe. That comes in at least 50-60 kilos heavier than this, and that's a lot smaller. So I think this is where that spirited drive comes from. As Colin Chapman used to say, just add lightness, and I think that's what Skoda's done. Back in the 70s and 80s, and yes, I can remember that far back, we used to call Skodas in the UK upturned skips on wheels. Not to be confused with upturned corrugated prams on wheels, which were the Citroen 2CV. So it's safe to say they had a pretty bad reputation. But come 1991, when the Volkswagen Group, or the VAG Group, acquired the brand, that all changed. Now you see, Skoda were always engineers. As far back as 1906 they were building cars, and in 1981, even though we were calling them Upturned Skips, they won the European Car Touring Championship with their Fabia S2000, I think it was called. So given the fact that they could do that even in the Soviet era, in machinery, workshops, tooling and so on, and they could still beat some of Europe's best in 1981. So imagine their relief, I think, once they had access to better equipment, probably better funding, better plans, because they can basically utilize the platform that Volkswagen were using. So it's really made a big difference. Okay, well, let's talk about the drive, because ultimately that's really why you would want to buy an RS over any other model of the Skoda range. It's a blast, it really is. Yeah, it's not the most powerful RS engine out there now, but with 350 Newton meters of torque, which is pretty on par with what the original Porsche Cayman came out with back in the day, it's enough. But it's really the speeds that you could overtake in which really makes this a really useful car to be driving around in. So yeah, sure, it will do 60 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour in just shy over 6.5 seconds. But when you want to go and overtake, shove it into third gear, it will do 60 to 100 kilometers an hour in only 3 seconds. Now, when you consider a Ferrari F355 did that in 3.7 seconds, we're beating a Ferrari. Top speed is 154 miles an hour. Now, that was supercar territory when I was a kid. Over 150 miles an hour, absolutely incredible. So you've got everything. Practicality, space, and a really engaging drive. Now, what would I change? There's a few things. I'd love to have a rear-wheel drive one, but they don't make those. And I'm certainly not going to buy a diesel just to try the all-wheel drive. But for now, this is a great car. I've enjoyed owning it and driving it. Even on track, it's been amazing. Fuel economy? Yeah, it probably depends on how heavy your right foot is. Mine's probably quite laden. I think I'm averaging 11.1 per 100 kilometers, so that's not great. But if you really do poodle around, use six gear, maybe put into normal mode, not sports mode, you can bring that down to 6 litres per 100 kilometers, which is pretty frugal. But if you've got a sporty wagon, why don't you use it? It's a 40-litre tank, so it's not a massive tank, but certainly you can get 400 or 500 kilometers out of that tank, so you're not constantly visiting the fuel stops. So what about the costs? Well, this car, when I bought it 4 years ago, cost me $28,000. I traded in my Holden Cruise SRIV, to say it's the exception that breaks the rule, because nothing went wrong with that car, and it was a little go-kart around the track. In fact, it even had a nickname from the officials at Wakefield Park Raceway, that they couldn't believe how nimble that car was, and that it was only literally 2-3 seconds slower than my friend's Porsche Cayman S around the track. Now, does that say more about his driving or the car? I'm not sure. I'd like to think it was the car. But nonetheless, this cost me $28,000 4 years ago. And not one thing has gone wrong in that period of time, apart from needing to replace the oil sump guard, which is a plastic piece that's underneath the car. That was I think it was $500 as a part, and fitted with the service. I think it cost me $1,300 with the service as well. So other than that consumable, really, it's just normal wear and tear from servicing, change of tyres and so on. Now, one thing I would suggest to anybody who's considering a Skoda is, and certainly if it's outside of warranty, don't take it to the dealers. I've been ripped off by the dealers. I think everybody's had a bad experience with them. So I found a friendly independent close to my home to service the car. But nonetheless, I service it once a year. And it's costing me, you know, between $800 and $1,200 each time, depending what needed to be done. Going forward, I would assume it's going to be towards the $800 mark now, using the independent rather than going through to the dealer. Yes, these cars have been prone with water pump issues, and with the cam belt needs to be changed, but we're looking at around about 160,000 kilometers for that to happen, so 100,000 miles. This one's only done 86,761 kilometers right now. So certainly I would say preventative maintenance is probably best. So rather than wait for that 160,000 limit, I'll probably look to change the water pump around about 100,000 kilometers, and at the same time probably do the cam belt then. Other than that, I did ask Skoda to investigate a knock that I thought I heard coming from the front suspension. They kindly checked and re-greased everything, but put everything back and charged me an absolute fortune for the privilege, which is probably one of the reasons why I chose not to go back to Skoda. But nonetheless, there was nothing wrong. So that re-greasing maybe really stopped that knocking I was hearing. As I've mentioned, the rear wing, or the only wing on this car, is becoming loose. The glue is going off, so I need to re-glue that. But there's nothing else that is of concern. So what don't I like about this car? Well, it isn't much, to be honest. My overarching gripe is the sound. There isn't any. It's anemic at best. In VRS mode, it pipes through this sort of sporty sound, but it doesn't quite sound like an engine should. Maybe if it was a 5-pot engine, you'd get a better burble. Inline 4, probably not the best sounding engine in the world, but with the way that they've got the catalytic converters and exhaust, it's just no noise at all that comes out of the back. That's a little bit disconcerting. I don't like the way this center console rubs against my knee when I'm changing gear. So it's not so bad on one track because I'll have the seat in its lowest possible position. So my knee's not banging against this part all the time, but certainly at other times it gets in the way and it becomes quite sore. I've mentioned about some of the scratchy plastics. This one's not so much, but the scratchy plastic here on the handle, not nice. It could have been a bit nicer. This car was spec'd with only the half leather and cloth seats. Perhaps it would have been nicer in the full leather, but they're practical and easy to keep clean. I don't like the fact that they don't get a Skoda umbrella. Is it just a superb thing? I'm not sure, but it would have been nice. And what else? Initially, I didn't like the pedal spacing, but as you may have seen, I'm wearing flip-flops, or as we call them out here, thongs. They're not underwear, they're flip-flops. So it's very easy to heel and toe barefoot. You do need to have a flat-soled shoes if you're gonna be wearing shoes when you want to try and heel and toe in it. But initially I found it a bit far apart, but I've got used to it now. So it's great fun heel and toeing this. What else? I needed to write it down so I don't forget them. The rims, yeah, I've scratched every single rim. Obviously, it's the Sydney curves that have been jumping out of me. It's certainly not my fault, but every single one, which is unsightly, and I do need to get that sorted. But you can't really blame the car for that. But I guess it's more to the point as what do I like? One of the first things is that I love the fact there's no massive running costs. Now I came from the land of discovery, As you may have seen in a previous video, I was on my bike. I had a Land Rover Discovery 3, which I loved. We had it for almost 10 years, but it cost me $4,000 a year to keep it on the road, plus the cost of the car. Yeah, I don't miss that. I can get 5 up in here. My eldest son is 6'5". My eldest daughter is almost 6 foot. The other 2 are probably going to get that way as well. But we can all be in here with plenty of space in the back to put all their luggage. I obviously run around with my detailing products in this car. So it's a workhorse. It's a daily. So there are little scratches here and there, little dings. Only one of which I've done. But nonetheless, the practicality is fantastic. I love the drive. What else do I like? The brakes are brilliant. Brembo brakes, big ones on the front, not so big on the back, but they rarely fade. Even on track, they don't fade. And just excellent. I've had to change brake pads, I believe. I've only changed the rear pads once, or possibly twice, and the front pads twice. The sound system is a really good sound system. Infotainment system, yes, it's 9 years old, but it's very functional. It's everything I need. I don't need all the bells and whistles. I like having a key to start a car with rather than a stop-start button. It's just old school because there's less things to go wrong, including the seats. There's no electric seats, but I can get very comfortable in here, and I've not heard a peep from my kids being uncomfortable. This comes with Apple CarPlay, which even today you can't get in every single car. So it's everything you'd really need or require. It doesn't have vast amounts of driver aids. It's got cruise control. Doesn't have adaptive cruise control. I don't need lane assist. And I don't know about you, but all these driver aids, I think, they're making people lazy driving around the roads and expecting the car to do it for them. One of the reasons why I drive a manual, because it allows you to get under the car's skin. You become, it sounds a bit wanky to say you become one with the car, but you get to learn the car's personalities. It certainly does have a character. And just learning how to control the car, use engine braking to slow down, and I want all my kids to learn in a manual. So it's the only way, I think, and I think every single person should be required to learn a manual car, even if they're going to always buy an automatic, because I think it helps them understand how to drive a car properly in all conditions. Too often you see automatic drivers constantly hit the brakes going around corners, particularly on a hill. Sometimes if it's slippery, they wonder why they're skidding. But if everybody gets taught in a manual, they'll understand they can change down gear to slow down. They don't have to hit their brakes. The car is much more in control and it's much more pliable on the road. So to sum up then, after a little over 4 years of ownership and almost 40,000 kilometers. So I bought the car on 47,000 kilometers, and now it's done 86,761. Yeah, the car purports to do it all, and I have to say it does run that pretty close. Oh, that wing is annoying me. Now I need to go find some tiger glue or something like that to stick that back, which is a bit cheap, isn't it, really? I think it'll have a bolt or something, but no, it's glue. So yeah, it's not as roomy as a Land Rover Discovery, obviously, but it's not an SUV. But the practicality, its sportiness, it's great to drive, it's cheap to run, it's fun, particularly in manual, guys. And I'd suggest if you're in the market for a spirited wagon, go and check these out. I prefer this shape as well. It's less fussy than the newer ones. Plus, you can't get a manual in a newer one. So I think it looks good. Yeah, black paint looks good, and it's got that the blacked out package, I think. Does mark very easily, shows the dirt very quickly. but as a detailer, I don't mind washing my car. So yeah, all in all, I think it's safe to say, I love this car. We could attempt to listen to the piped-in sound. That's the speed limit, 80 kilometers. I can't go any faster than that, unfortunately. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Certainly if you've got this far in the video, really appreciate it. Please subscribe or comment if you haven't done so already. Really keen to know what you think. If you've got a Skoda RS, what's your impressions? Have you had problems? Let me know. See you soon.